Well, hello if you are here. We can't see ourselves yet, but we'll presume that somebody is here. If you are here, maybe you could put a little message into the chat box. Richard's here to help out. Maybe he can write into the chat box. If you just remove the cover slide, then I'll see myself. I don't see anything yet.
Yeah, I don't see anything either.
No, I don't see anything.
Oh, there we go. 53 people.
Okay, we're here. We're live. 53 people are here so far. Okay, if you are here, I'd love to hear where you are tuning in from. I know that we have people all across the world, so maybe it's the morning, maybe it's the evening for you. Oh, there's Amy. Hey, Amy's here to help out too. She's part of the Everything Art team. She's fabulous. I hope you saw her yesterday with Kaja. She was wearing a fabulous sparkly shirt for her broadcast. There we go, Everything Art. Hello from Michigan, hello. As you can see, my apron did not arrive, and my children were very upset that I don't have my apron yet. In fact, my 9-year-old said to me, if it doesn't arrive in time, do you get to keep it? So I'll have to go live another time and wear my apron. Instead, I decided to wear some colors that will match the kind of foresty things that we'll be doing today. These are some of the colors that we're working with. Okay, people popping on.
Yeah, Sweden.
Oh, wow, all over Oregon Coast, Maryland, Cincinnati.
Germany.
Great, it's wonderful. I'm presuming because of the time zones that some of you will have already been watching this morning, some of the other live broadcasts. I think Shemi Dixon just finished hers, and so we'll just give a minute, people, to transfer from one live to another.
Let's see about that sound.
Oh, the sound needs bumping up. Okay, we're working off sound off the laptop, but we could put the microphone on.
Yeah,
okay. Hello, hello. I could also speak a little bit louder. California, hello, more volume from everyone. Okay, let's just, before I really get into it. Okay, Richard, my husband, is on tech duty here, and he's going to crank up the volume. Okay, full volume, and they still can't hear. Let's fix that. Yeah. Oh, we have a Canadian, Southern Alberta. Hello, Shannon. An auntie who lives on Vancouver Island. Or closed captions. Okay, everyone says they can't quite hear, so could we switch to this microphone? It's going up, it's going up. Let's see. Okay, no one can hear. Somebody can hear fine. Sorry, guys, we'll get this fixed pretty quickly. I've done lots of Zoom calls and Zoom workshops and recording, but in this live format is new. You can do it within OBS, says everything. Yeah. Okay.
Turning everything up.
Okay. Well, just while he's getting the volume turned up, what we'll do quickly for a minute here, since you can't maybe hear me yet, is I'll show you some things, some sketchbooks to show my work, or some little paintings. Now I can't see myself on the camera. So this is typical of my work.
Okay.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the type of watercolor paintings that I do. I do lots of miniature work. And then up on the wall behind me, you can see I used to do quite a bit of acrylic painting, and then I switched to watercolor in the last couple of years. Okay, so we're good with sound then? Okay, well then an official welcome to everybody. I'm glad that you can finally hear me. That's really exciting. So my name is Nicole Warrington. I'm an artist on Vancouver Island. This will be my 3rd year in Wanderlust. So I've taught two rounds of it already. And if you were with me in the previous years, you'll know my lessons. In the first year, I did a lesson called Spirit Tree. And then this past year, mine aired in July, and it was about jellyfish and the coast here with very similar colors to this painting right up here and this painting right here. And this year for Wanderlust, my lesson will be part of the Artful Musings series. So that's where we go a bit more in depth with an artist chat. So you'll get to see more of my face and my studio. And I'll also be sharing some video from around Vancouver Island. The landscape's really important to me and a big part of my work. So in that Artful Musings, I'll be sharing the magic of movement and talking to you about how I bring movement into my paintings and my art journaling. Lots of you are probably already, oh, Maple Ridge, hey, you're close. Um, lots of you are probably already signed up for Wanderlust. If you haven't signed up yet and you're interested in joining the year-long adventure, it starts in January, but there's bonuses now, as well as it's on sale right now until October 31st. So we'll put the link in the chat there. It's 55 weekly videos. You have all sorts of different teachers with different styles and projects for you each week. I love opening my inbox on a Friday and seeing who's teaching and what's coming up. It's a great way to just explore a whole bunch of different mixed media techniques, try out some different styles. Those of you who are brand new to art will learn so much in this year, as well as those of you who have been experienced with art and art journaling. It gives you a chance to look at your practices again and try some new things. So I do a lot of watercolor work. I know a lot of art journalers work in acrylics. So I often try out the lessons in watercolor instead of acrylic and see how I can use what the teacher's offering and bring my style to it as well. So yeah, the sale price is $99 US instead of $175, the regular price. So that's a great deal for an entire year of classes. And that's on sale until the end of October. So before Halloween, you can sign up. Okay, let's see where else are coming in from. Sweden. And yeah, lots of different places. Great. As I said, my husband Richard is here to help me out too, so you'll hear his voice in the background and he'll help me switch cameras. And if you have questions, be sure to put them in the chat and I can answer them while I'm working. He'll just call them out to me. Oh, I love Spirit Tree. It always gets commented on. Thank you. Yeah, trees are a big part of my work, and I will be doing a tree in this lesson as well. So let me tell you a little bit more about me and where I live. I have a background in fine arts. I went to art school and then I went on to work in nonprofit arts in Vancouver for a number of years. And then I retrained to become an elementary school teacher. And I have worked as a substitute teacher for a number of years in Vancouver as well as on the island. And since the birth of my little girls, I have spent more time working from home and doing online lessons like this. I work at a local art studio as well, teaching in-person workshops for beginners. And yeah, I spend a lot of time in the outdoors, which you'll see represented in my work. For those of you who aren't familiar with Vancouver Island, it is an enormous island. Oh, my mom's here. Thank you for letting me go to art school, Mom. That's Tony. The Vancouver Island is actually an enormous island if you're not familiar with the area. So it's a temperate rainforest. We looked up the island this morning to see just how big it is in comparison to something else that you might know. The island takes 7 hours to drive from one end to the other, and I'm kind of midway up the island on the east coast in a town called Comox. And it's about the size of Belgium or Taiwan, which I just learned this morning. So this is temperate rainforest. We've been going through a drought right now, so it's feeling very different than the normal fall that we would have. It would usually be raining sideways, and it sort of starts raining in September and rains till, well, last year it rained till June. A lot of rain, but the rain is what makes it really beautiful here, and that's going to be the theme. We're working with a forest theme today, and the temperate rainforest is really what inspires me here. It's lovely because we have mountains, and the mountains kind of drop down into the coastline, and then we have this ocean coastline too, so I get the best of all worlds. Yeah, Richard's got a picture of the forest here just to give you a sense. Oh, that's a picture of me on the coast. That's just across the way from here in a place called Desolation Sound. I think that's actually at a place called Galley Bay, so it might actually be mainland side, but there's all these islands between Vancouver Island and the mainland coast mountains, which you see in the background there. So beautiful, rugged coast. I grew up going sailing here, and thanks again to my parents for taking me on those experiences. And that's really been the basis and inspiration for my work. Do you have a forest one too? So this is a local park that we go to called Seal Bay, and you can see the beautiful trees and ferns that we have here. It kind of feels like Jurassic Park, which didn't they film Jurassic Park in BC? They film a lot of movies in BC, so you might get to see beautiful British Columbia and things that you watch. So today we are looking at water-soluble Caran pastels. They have a big long name. So the company is Caran, and they're called Neocolor II Aquarelle water-soluble wax pastels, which sounds sort of impossible. How can they be wax and water-soluble? They look like this. They are also referred to as crayons sometimes, and that's how I was introduced to them. So they're a pastel, but you frequently hear me saying crayon, sort of interchangeably with pastel. They're Swiss made, and from Rhodesia Island. I'm hoping to move there. Oh wow. So these are Swiss made pastels. They are different from the Neocolor ones, which I don't work with. The Neocolor one is the dry pastel, or not water soluble, and the Neocolor II is the water soluble one. So if this is something you're interested in buying, be sure to look for the two, and it's just on the label. That's probably a bit small to see, but it's on the label too, and it says Aquarelle as well. I'm here in Ontario and Vancouver Island. It's one of my favorite places. Yes, Tofino's beautiful, beautiful place to visit. So what's really great about these pastels is that they can be used wet or dry, which I'll show you today. They have soft, velvety texture. I've kind of joked that it feels like if you're a kid and you ever took your mom's lipstick and drew on something with your mom's lipstick, that's kind of the consistency of the pastel. It feels wonderful to move around on the page. They're not dusty or crumbly, although they do, when you're pushing hard with them, they do have a tendency to break, so you end up with all these little bits, but I'm going to show you what to do with your little bits today too. Oh, what other pastels could you use for the lesson today? Well, you could simply work with watercolor today too, if you have a set of watercolor, or if you have some watercolor pencil crayons. I'm going to use a watercolor palette as well today, and some of the techniques are similar. All the techniques I use today, pretty much you could use with watercolor pencil crayons. Does that make sense? And you could, I mean, I think you could try with dry pastel too. It would be quite different, but you could push dry pastel around with a wet brush. That would be different because it's crumbly, but it could give some cool techniques and texture too. So what I really like about these is they have really good covering power. So watercolors are quite, they're quite light and translucent sometimes. So sometimes when I'm really missing acrylics and that thickness of acrylics, then when I'm doing a mixed media piece, I'll do watercolor first and then add these on top because they give me that nice rich color on top. And they have excellent light fastness as well, which means that if you're using them in like a finished painting, they won't fade over time. They are also non-toxic, so you can push them around with your fingers. And actually, I think one of the first ways that I ever used these was as face paints, and I use them for face paints with my kids too. So I thought about adding a little to my face today. Richard has a color chart that he's going to put into the chat. It's by Caran Dash. I use Posca a lot too. And there are, I believe at this time there's 84 different colors, and you can buy sets of them. So there's a color chart that he can put in the chat box, and you can check it out. On their website, they also have little charts where you can, they're blank, and you can fill out your own color swatches, but I'll show you how I color swatch them. It's a really good idea to color swatch your colors because eventually you're going to be peeling the paper off as you go. And I do have some mystery pastels now. I don't remember what color they were because I never color swatched them in the first place. And if you can go to a store, you can color match again, but I often shop online because of where I live. And so it's really nice to have color swatch. So I can show that on the table, but I'll hold it up first. Is there a question there?
Just different ideas for crayons.
Oh yeah, Stabilo pencils or the woodies. Yeah, the big thick woodies would be similar. The Diana Wakely scribble sticks could work too. So this is kind of how I color chart them, and then I just make a little note of the name underneath. And you can see here that I have some that were mystery ones. I didn't think to label them when I first got them, and then now I don't know what they are.
Is that a question about gelatos?
I think gelatos would be similar as well. Yeah. Yeah, so you can buy them in a set, but I actually prefer to buy them individually. And so each time I do an order, here in BC, I order from Opus Art Supplies a lot. And so every time I'm ordering other watercolors and papers and things, I kind of add 1 or 2 colors each time to sort of build up my set. The challenge with buying a huge set is if you don't like all the colors. I don't work a lot with reds and oranges. And so then buying a set, I might end up with a bunch of colors that I'm not using. Yeah, the swatching set is really handy. Okay, so you can also combine these with watercolors, which you'll see today, and you can work with these Caran pastels on top of acrylic paintings as well. But the thing to remember though, when you're mixing media, is you have to keep track when you're using lots of layers, what's water soluble and what's not. So the water soluble layers of your journal or your painting, they can be reconstituted with more water. So if you work with one of these on top of an acrylic painting or acrylic page, if you then introduce more water on top of that, it will start to disappear off your painting because it gets rehydrated in the process. Some people like to use a spray fixative. I have some challenges with spray fixative because I have asthma, so I use them outside, but I don't use them on every journal page. This is one that I've worked with, a Krylon archival spray, but as you can see, it requires some special treatment to be using that. There is one that I've heard of that I haven't tried yet I believe it's called Spectra, and it's a non-toxic varnish. I think it's a spray varnish, I'm not sure, but Spectra would be one to check out too for something that's requires not a mask or something to use it. Okay, thanks for the color chart. Yeah, mystery colors. Yeah, hopefully you can find out your mystery colors. I plan to take them back to the store and find out what they are. Okay, so I'm next going to share some of my sketchbooks. So we're going to switch the camera and I'll share some of my sketchbooks. We'll go through some different ways to use the pastels just on some loose paper, and then I'll show you a journal. We'll show you the process of doing a journal spread as well. So Richard's going to switch cameras here. I'll just read the chat for a second, get my head out of the way there. Notes, you can this is the elementary school teacher in me. I made lots of notes. I can't help myself. Or maybe that's mom too. My mom who is full of standard operating procedures because she's a science type and I'm an artist type. Okay, so I'll pull a few sketchbooks over here. I know people, when I'm posting things on Instagram, are always asking, which sketchbooks are you using? I use a variety of books. I guess, can I zoom this in? Okay, so my favorite small journal is the Moleskine watercolor album. So first of all, I'll show you, when I do more of a finished page, I'll tape the edges with washi tape. And so this one's mostly watercolor, but then when the watercolor was dry, I used this beautiful jade green, and I did some marks right on top here to create this nice thick texture on top of the watercolor painting. I don't know how close I can go without it going blurry. And then you can see I frequently use found words to do the writing in my journal. So I'm a bit more on the minimalist style. I don't use a lot of writing, but I do find writing really nice to add to the journal pages. This is what it looks like more in a painting than a journal page. I love doing these mini paintings, doing 2 of them per page. And so just most of this is watercolor, but then there's a bit of blue pastel up here. And then this green color, I think might be a touch of this greenish blue pastel. And this one has some more journal type pages. Oh, 2 more little mini paintings. So you can see that I work with the landscape, but kind of abstracted landscape. This one is a sort of different style for me. I painted the forest. I did this branchy kind of tree bush first in brown watercolor, and then I worked quite thickly with the pastel on top, mostly dry. So I was working in the negative space of all the branches, which is a really nice way to work with the pastel. And I've kind of got a few layers of blue and different kind of olive greens, and again that nice jade green, which is bright punch of color. Any more questions that Oh, thank you. This one's what I would call a really like loose abstracted journal page. There's elements of the landscape, like these soft foggy trees, which we get a lot of scenes like this on Vancouver Island. Just move that marker. And then I'll have these abstract marks. I work sort of intuitively and I don't necessarily know what I'm representing. Like this is representational trees, but then this, you know, these marks might be the river, they might be the ocean. And then these lines sort of representing the pathway or moving through something. When I go to nature, I kind of feel like I'm moving into, this one says gentle, a gentle spirit. Okay, and then this is one of my larger journals. This is the Stillman and Byrne journal, mixed media. I think this would be the beta series, soft cover. So again, kind of an intuitive page. I don't have a plan in mind. I might have some colors in mind, but I just start kind of rolling the pastels around, putting some color down, and then something comes out of that, either a feeling or the words or some imagery. And this one, sometimes it turns into a bit more of a scene with sort of a bit of a foreground, middle ground, and background. In the back here, I often work in pencil too, so I have some representation of the mountains there. And again, this archway that keeps coming in. And then some mark making with pen work as well.
You know, just talking about taping the edges.
What's that? Taping the edges?
Taping, for the mini paintings that you're masking and then...
Yeah, I use washi tape for the mini paintings. But I don't always take, like in these journals, I don't take the time necessarily to tape the edges. So this one's mostly watercolor, but then there's that jade green again, pastel, some wet into wet watercolor pencil crayon. I really like the way this turned out. So I dragged this pencil crayon water soluble through the wet paint, and then it creates this effect where the pigment kind of spreads out into the wet paint. And then I know a lot of you probably love the Posca markers. This is a Posca paint pen in this bright green color, teal green, and use that to do some mark making on top as well. So some representational, some abstraction. And then one more book that I've been playing with lately is this book. Oh, I'll zoom out a little here. This is a book that I found at the thrift store. It was 79 cents, a huge splurge. My daughter, it said that I should buy it. It's brown paper, and I've always just loved working with brown paper, whether it was brown paper bag or craft paper, butcher's paper that you can buy. So this is working with the pastels dry onto this brown paper, because the brown paper it sucks up the water. So I did the tree in pen and then the pastels on top. Another kind of foresty one, I had some distress ink in the background, and then did some mark making that's sort of suggestive of green cedar tree on top. And then this is a page that I started but didn't finish. So I can't work really wet on this paper, but you can still work on, I say have a go. Try it on any paper that you like. Is there a question there?
Just a few stencils, either yours or Purchase.
No, I don't actually use stencils. Mostly so that I don't go crazy and buy too much stuff at the art supply store. Sometimes, was it a stencil in here she thought she saw maybe? No, just drawing. There's one piece here that was just a drawing, and then I painted in the negative space. This page worked out really. I just tested this for the first time. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but because these pages are kind of absorbent, I used clear gesso first. So clear gesso, I just used the Liquitex brand, and I coated the page, let it dry, and then this is Stabilo All pencil in black, and then this is all Neocolor down here, maybe with a little bit of pencil crayon in it as well. But I really liked the way that it could blend, so I did a little bit of water to blend it, but then mostly dry. And the gesso really helped it have a bit of tooth to the page. And then sometimes I work super abstractly like this. I was just thinking about the forest and color swatching and some cool collage papers that an artist from Vancouver sent me. A little bit of found poetry, mosses on the rocks, comfort to her. Yeah, so lots of expressive mark making. So let's zoom out a little bit here so you can see what I've got in here. Is that good? Okay. So I'll just show you how they work first on this, and then we'll get into a journal. So this is just Canson paper. It's my kind of go-to cheap paper to play on. Oh, it went out of focus there. There we go. Okay, so the first way that you can work with these is dry. So I will just scribble it on here, kind of like working with a crayon. And then I wet down my brush. For working with these, I kind of like a brush that's not as stiff. So this is actually cheaper, a synthetic brush from Opus, those of you who are local to BC. Not cheap or bad, but just the bristles aren't super soft, and that actually works well to help scrub the color. So you can see as soon as I touch down, I can create a wash from that. And so you could draw out the color and actually get a fairly soft wash. You can also work wet into wet. So if I'm coming over here to my watercolor, I work mostly with Daniel Smith paints. So if I put a wet area down first, then I can bring the pastel right into that wet area. So I can first of all just do it dry if I want to, or I can dip the pastel first. Is it annoying to have it focus like that? I could. It's hunting for focus. Well, you could focus lock on the, but I was going to hold it up so you can see it a little bit closer. So the wet into wet creates a different look. Okay, so that was wet into wet. You can also use these dipping and splattering, which is one of my favorite. I'll do that with a darker color so you can see it better. So to get this going, you need to dip it a couple of times. If the first time you shake it to splatter, it doesn't go, it just needs to be in the water a little bit longer. And then you get a nice soft splatter, or you can just tap it like this and create some beautiful wet marks. So each time you touch down with a pastel, it's creating a little puddle around it too. A good trick for if your puddles get, if it's a little bit too much for you, is you can use your brush to drink it up again. Okay. I didn't say to have a spray bottle today in your supplies, but I will show you. I love working with a spray bottle with these. So one idea is to get some splatter. This is a nice rich color. This is the greenish blue. And then after you've splattered it, you have kind of intense pigment here. And this is a bottle just from the dollar store, a spritzer. And when I spray it, once I've sprayed it, it will create this nice puddle of water around it to let the pigment move. And you could even do a spray and a drip if you really want to wash it out. Are there any comments, questions to add in there, Richard?
Someone's watching from Australia, and it's 3:26 a.m.
I was going to say, isn't it 4 a.m. in Australia? Oh, you get 3 stars for showing up at that time. That's amazing. So that was the drip and the spritz. Another idea for spritzing is if you draw an element first. So let's say I do something that's a bit like a fern. So this was dry. I didn't dip it first. So get your drawing going. I'll just do some little marks. Very quick fern. You could do this with any kind of botanical imagery like a tree or flowers. Any more to read out, Richard? Well,
Love your style. Looking forward to your lesson in Wanderlust 23.
Oh, yay.
Lots of them.
Okay, so I've drawn that in, just dry, and then never quite know how this is going to go because how much water and how much it'll spread, but start off rather tentatively and you can spritz it. And wait a few seconds to see how much the pigment's going to start to move before overdoing it. That's probably good. And then it gives this really soft look to whatever you've drawn. So that spritz of water is helping the pigment spread out. And I love that, especially for the West Coast, because it has that rain, it's always raining here through the winter. And so that's a nice soft look. If it starts to spread a little too far, you can again use your brush just to drink it up. Or you can use your brush to encourage it to feather it out a little bit more too. But I love the way it kind of looks like sediment. It reminds me of the beach when the tide comes in and then it sort of makes things spread out in the sand. And let's see, what else was I going to show? Oh, you can use, there's 2 ends to every pastel. So you've got this end. Some people like to sharpen it. I don't, because I feel like then I'd be wasting that pigment if I sharpened it. But you can sharpen them to get a finer tip. And then another idea is to use the other end. So sort of the flat end, you can get a finer line from. And I often vary my line quality by twirling my hand as I draw. So kind of press harder and twirl, and you can get these different lines here. And then every time you've drawn something when it's dry, you have the option of hydrating it later. Need another rag there. So you can go through and add water and soften it as much as you want. So you can soften it and let all the color blend out to the side, or just add a little stroke on top to soften it. Also with the flat end, you can do a stamping technique. So one time I think I discovered this just by accidentally grabbing the wrong end of the pastel. And this kind of reminds me of doing the bubble wrap stamping. And the more water you add, the blurrier the stamp. Show that a little closer. And then I told you that you end up with these little bits. So eventually they start to break, or you have just the little bit left over the crayon. And so I found a really fun way to work with them is to dip them in the water. So your hands are going to get all wet first. Nice to have a little t-shirt rag. And then I roll them. And so on the first roll, I get a fairly solid line. But as it starts to dry off, you can get these really cool texture and twirl them around. And to me, this really makes me think of like the moss that grows on the trees here. Or if you did it in brown, it could look like tree bark. Tree bark. I don't know why I stumble on that.
Is that a question about what your favorite watercolor brushes are?
Oh, my favorite watercolor brushes. You could also soften it like this. I work with a variety of brushes. I'm not one to spend a ton on my brushes because I'm a little bit rough on them. So I have quite a number of brushes from Opus Art Supplies, and I have three levels of brush. These are older brushes. I don't know if they even sell them anymore, but they say these were made in England, but they're BC companies, so they must have imported these ones. Very soft synthetic brush. I work with flat and round brushes. And then this is the Galliano series from Opus, named after an island here, so I kind of like that it's got that BC feeling to it. And then this sort of the next step up from the Galliano are these Opus Allegro brushes. So these are Sablite brushes as well. And then there's a lady out of Ontario who goes by Wanderlust is her Instagram name and her company name. And I bought these brushes. I just love the color. I couldn't help myself. Look at those color with the ferrule that is copper. So I ordered some of those. But it's neat too because when I ordered this set, I hadn't really had a rigger brush like this, a long brush, or this little filbert, which also makes really nice marks. And then recently I purchased a nice Princeton Aqua Elite brush. So this one I'll use more for my watercolor paintings than messing around in a journal, because sometimes when I'm working in a journal, I often add gesso or something like that too, and I just don't want to risk getting gesso on a really expensive brush. Yeah. Okay, so we did the rolling. The other thing is, I'll just move my palette over here a bit. You could just use these as paint. So if you have a color, you can just push it. I dipped it a little bit first and push it on here. I'll get a couple going. And you can make yourself your own little puddle of paint. And what's nice is, you might have just bought a color that you like of these that is a lot less expensive than buying, a $20 tube of paint, although these are beautiful and wonderful. But you can use these colors to add to your color palette range, and then you can just paint with those. And then the nice thing is too, you can blend the colors. So I can get a new green there with both of them. And then they're functioning just like a watercolor, as if you were using watercolor out of your palette. When you have them like that as well in your palette, I have just a flat brush here and I dried it off on a rag. And if I come in, this is a bit of an older scrubby brush. If I drag it through here, or actually I bet even if I just drag it right onto the pastel, I can get some nice dry brush technique there. Oh, painting just fell off the desk. So that's the dry brush there. It's okay, it's okay. And so in combination, you can layer up the colors, and I'll start a journal page in just a minute here too. So you can add some dry colors together. I love having a white because I use the white as a blender. So I could dip the white into there. And it's neat because you can leave some marks that look like drawn marks, but then you can also soften anything and have it more watery. So I like being able to have two kinds of texture. Okay. This was the page that I was playing with last night or a couple days ago, and similar. similar techniques of dry brush and rolling and the splatter, softening the lines, rolling. This is what it looks like when you put several colors together. And every time you dip the crayon or the pastel, it has some water, and it might introduce more water to your area, and it creates a bloom, which in a watercolor painting I might not like, but in journaling I really like having this texture. Some people call it cauliflower, where at the edges it gets kind of ragged because the water has pushed the pigment to the edge. Okay. Oh, when I travel, yeah, that's a good point. When you travel and you feel like painting, yeah, you could just take a handful of these for traveling. And what's nice, one of the reasons why I got into watercolor is that I had a child who would keep waking up from naps, and I got tired of having acrylic paints that would dry up on me. And watercolor, you can take it with you, you can set it up, you can stop at any time, and then just start again, which is nice. I'll just use the brush to pick up the pigment straight from the crayon. Yeah, so is it Anna? I can't read that far. Anna saying she just goes like this. So you could just pick up the color from here and then just paint with it, which is a great option as well. So let's get into a journal page. Oh, it goes by fast time, hey? Okay, so the journal that I'm going to use, oh, just one more underneath my journal, I found this. This is what it looks like with the pastel when it's dry on top of something acrylic. So this is jelly print, so that's black acrylic paint, a jelly print of some seed pods, and then you can see that it works really nicely on top of the acrylic. Okay. Oh, this is my favorite new journal. Let's move this up a little bit. This is the Handbook Journal, so it's called let me get this right, the Handbook Journal Company. It's made by Speedball Art, and this is a watercolor album. So this is one of my more expensive journals. I'm really enjoying it because I really like the watercolor paper in it. It's nice and heavy. I'll show you a couple pages from this one. Here's a taped painting that I did, very reminiscent of Desolation Sound. There's a background that I started. That might have been with Neocolor actually. Didn't finish that one quite yet. This is sort of typical of my abstracted journaling. And this one's sort of what we're going for today, this foresty feel. So this is a bit of a textured watercolor paper. I've also worked a lot with the Neocolor in, oh, it's buried here. This is the Stillman and Byrne journal, as well as the Strathmore Mixed Media soft cover journal. That's that brown soft cover journal. So it doesn't have to be paper as thick as this for you to work on. And you can also just do this on loose paper. I got my kid's sippy cup here so I don't put my paintbrush inside my water. Okay, so this is how I would begin a page. I usually put a little piece of paper behind it so it doesn't, especially in a more expensive book, I don't want it to drip onto the pages behind it. Got more questions, comments there?
Just works beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and get painting here. Okay, so a nice way to start, we all face this fear of the blank page, even if you've been painting for years. And what I like about an intuitive style is that I let the materials dictate some of the drawing or painting, so that I don't have to get super uptight about the composition. There's a time and a place for that when I'm doing kind of finished paintings, but when I'm doing journaling, I just like to play. So if you right away just splatter something on your page, now you already have something down and you don't have to fuss too much about it. So I'm going to get some lines going by rolling. I think that's my olive green. This is a beautiful blue that I just added this summer. It's light cobalt blue, and it almost has a purple feel to it.
Question about how the Neocolors compare to the oil pastels.
Compared to an oil pastel. Well, if you work with an oil pastel, you could work with watercolor as well, but the watercolor would resist on the oil pastel. Is that sort of the question? I'm not sure. So I put some down, start moving it around, also bring in some color. This is Verdant or Blue. That's one of my favorites from Daniel Smith. This is watercolor pencil crayon. This is made by Derwent, and this is a favorite new color, Smalt Blue. Just got that last year. So I often hold my tools kind of loosely so that I can I can just play around and not get, I feel most of us get uptight when we're painting, not not loose enough. And I start to have stuff everywhere. My stuff starts to spread out pretty quickly. One of my,
So
go ahead.
answer to the question, she said Neocolors. Someone said Neocolors are water soluble and oil pastels are not.
Yes, sorry, maybe I wasn't being that clear about that. Yeah, so you could use oil pastels. You could use Neocolors on top of acrylic in a similar way that you would use oils, but they might not stay if you add other layers. So if you have Neocolor down and then you drag a brush on top of it, then it will smear. I don't work with oil pastels very much. I really like water soluble things. My favorite very West Coasty color is Payne's Gray. And I mostly work with Daniel Smith, and I recently bought Jane's Gray, but there's something about the Winsor & Newton Payne's Gray that really just feels like the color I love. It's that deep navy blue. It reminds me of the mountains, of the night sky, the water on a dark day. So I'll get some really strong pigment here. I'm going to show you one of my favorite dragging techniques. So I'm thinking about maybe a river. I'll hold my brush really loosely. Do you think it should zoom in? It's okay. No, thinking about rocks in the river. So here we have lots of rivers that come down from the mountains. It's actually salmon spawning season here. Although the salmon are struggling because there's not quite enough water in our creeks and rivers right now. So when I have lots of pigment really wet in there, and I like to draw through it with my pencil. How are we doing on time? Oh, it goes by super quick. Okay. We better get a West Coast tree going on in here too. So feel like I need more greens in here. This green is called olive green, although, it's light olive, but it's really bright green color.
Like you're saying, West Coasty.
West Coasty. I know, I make up a lot of words. Ish, very ish. I don't know if you know the children's book by Peter H. Reynolds, but it's called Ish. I used to use it in the classroom when I was teaching more in the classroom with little kids. And the little girl thinks that she can't, or maybe it's a little girl or a little boy, but she thinks that she can't paint, and then realizes that they could just do things that are ish. So she makes a tree-ish or a vase-ish. Okay, some more greens. Let's get some olivey green in here. Let's show you a little wet into wet here. So if I create an area down here, balance out the color up there. So drag through wet into wet. And to me, I'll often make little marks, and then it's after I've made them that I think of something. So I just did those loops there, and I was thinking about plants first, actually. But now it's reminding me, we have lots of boardwalks here that go through the marshy areas by the beach, and so this kind of reminds me a little bit of a boardwalk. Some tapping for some little rain. We hope it's going to rain today, actually. We really, really need it. Okay, what else shall we add in here?
Yes, they use Stabilo Woody the same way.
I think so. I don't own any of them, but I do have Stabilo All pencils. So actually, there's probably a little other expert in the group who uses the Stabilos, or sorry, the Woodies. Wait, Stabilo Woodies? Yeah, I think that as far as I know, they're just a fatter version of this, but I don't own them myself, so I'm not entirely sure if that makes sense.
Wait, no, one can't answer it.
You know, that's what's so great about Wanderlust, is that if you are a Wanderlust student and you go into the classroom and ask a question, if it's a help, I can't figure out how to do this, one, the teachers are available to answer questions, and two, there's so many students who have answers. And when you do a lesson and you see how other people respond to the lesson, you learn so much from each other too. It's from the wonderful teachers, but it's really also from the students, which it's a really great community. I love this aqua color. I wouldn't necessarily see it up in the sky or the forest, but you would see it in the rivers here. I'm often thinking about water and the water cycle and things moving around. Okay, so I promised a West Coasty tree, so let's find a place for that. I feel like this needs something over here to balance it. Maybe put a little bit more blue. I like to have some more refined, thicker marks here. I just like the freedom of this style of journaling. It has a West Coasty feel to it, but everything doesn't necessarily have to be representational. And you know, I might not get time to do all of it today, but when I come back into it, I could work with a Faber-Castell Pitt pen or a Posca paint pen when it's dry and do some more details and writing and words on top. One thing to caution, I'll just think of it now, in the really thick areas of the pastel, it will clog up a paint pen, so or a writing pen. So I often try to leave some space where I'll do the writing. So this area where it's a nice light wash would make a great place where I could center the writing there, or you could do collaged words or imagery on top. So shall I paint? What do you think, Richard? Should I paint the tree or should I do it with a pen? I do feel like adding a little bit of pen for some of those. When you do the Posca into the wet, it's neat because it kind of spreads out. Would agree. I feel like these are a bit thick to do a tree on this scale, but I could try. And then I could paint another one. Here, let's go in here. It's still a bit wet. You know what? I'm just going to blast it dry so that I can make sure. Not too loud, hopefully. Where is it? You see very quickly everything starts to pile up. Okay, so for a tall West Coasty, maybe make it one that's leaning a little bit. So this one's broken at the end, so it gives me the advantage of having a sharper point to it. And when I'm teaching in person, people often ask about, well, how do you do that West Coast tree? Because they are also familiar with them from living here. And if anything, when people are making trees, they make them a little too Christmas tree-like. They, let's just go in a little closer. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry if that was a bit shaky. So people tend to make their trees too equal. And if you look at the trees here, they're droopy, they're wild. Some of them are kind of windswept at the top. And they don't have even branches. You know, they kind of lean and they're really scraggly in different parts. Could even go in with a little bit of a... I turned the sound down again. Sorry. Oh, did it? Oh, okay. Oh no, that's... How did it get turned down? Okay, so I'm going to be brave and spritz this one, which might be too much for it, but let's see. Can they hear now?
Yeah, I just asked if the sound's okay now. I turned it back up again.
Oh, after the heat gun. Did you turn it down when I put the heat gun on?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay.
Good.
So I'm just going to give it a little spritz to make it look more like a soft and rainy tree. And I don't want to put too much water on, but it won't go right away. Okay, let's see the other techniques which I didn't add to this. Okay. And just while I go on this a bit more, if you have questions about Wanderlust, feel free to pop them, or anything that you've seen today, feel free to pop them into the chat. Amy and Richard can both answer, or they can call them out to me and I can answer. So I might go in and add just a bit more dark green here, a little bit more definition. You could also wait till things are dry again and then go back in with a bit more detail if it all got just a little bit too soft on you. Anything else to add in there, Richard?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Well, give me your best trivia questions. Try to stump me.
Well, more dad jokes.
More dad jokes. Do we have any dad jokes?
Yeah, Amy could be
Oh, you should tell them Isabel's. My daughter she made up her own salmon joke, which is perfect for this time of year. What about under the bed? What kind of fish do you find under the bed? A sock-eyed salmon. That was her fish joke. She'll be happy that I got to share it with everyone. We do find lots of socks around our house. I don't know how, so many. So a reminder that Wanderlust is on sale right now for $99 for the year if you just tuned in and didn't see that. I'll zoom out a little bit here. And if you're looking to find me, connect online, my website is NicoleWarrington.com. And I'm on YouTube, of course, and on Instagram quite a bit as well. And on Instagram, I'm Coastal Nicole. In a dry patch, I'll just show using a bit of... I like to add birds to my paintings. Put a bird on it. Those of you from Oregon will know put a bird on it. From Portlandia. A question? Nancy? Love Vancouver Island and your artwork, Nicole. We will have to access this live video. Oh, to this live video. No, I believe these live videos will stay up on YouTube. So yeah. Oh, the volume again. Oh, okay, volume. Okay. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, you can watch the YouTubes just on YouTube, but if you sign up with the link to the whole weekend, because there's much more for the rest of the weekend, if you sign up for the whole weekend, then you will you'll go into the classroom, which is free for this weekend, the live classroom. It's okay, I don't need the lid. And then everything's in one place, so there's all the links. The other thing to do to check out other people's live videos is you hit the notify button, and then when it comes live, it will send you an email. Yeah. Okay, so it's not quite a finished page. I would want to add some writing to it, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how to play. When I'm looking at this right now, when I'm talking and working, it's a bit different than when I'm working just by myself on a piece. This part interests me, this strong line, but I feel like it needs something else to balance it out. So it might be that I would put some collage words sort of in this section, or have something coming from off the page down into here, like some rain. I really like, let's see how close I can get. I really like the way the pigments spread in this area here, this sort of wet into wet. And oh, I just can't resist a splatter of copper. And then maybe we'll turn the switch cameras, Richard. So I love these fine tech pearlescent paints. I keep separate brushes for them and separate water, so I don't make everything glittery. And I'm really enjoying, I used to always love silver, but now I'm really liking this copper color. And it makes me think of the things I find in the forest, sometimes like the coppery pine needles and things. So I'd put that, when you do the splatter wet into wet, it kind of fans out really pretty. And then if you just do it in a dry area, of course you get a dry splatter. It's quite subtle. Perhaps as I finish this, maybe I'll finish it up this evening, and then I could take a picture of it and put it inside the classroom or onto Instagram. Show you another little close up there. I don't know if it captures the copper there. Yeah, so that's that fine tech pearlescent. Also a mouthful. Okay, yeah, so some people are saying they're signing up right away. Yeah, loose and abstract, that's the way I like to go. I do more refined paintings as well, but I find for journaling, this allows me to really capture a quick expression and feeling. Sometimes I work in the moleskin with this similar style, and maybe I only spend 10 minutes journaling, but 10 minutes journaling is better than 10 minutes of not journaling. Do you want to switch the camera, and then I'll just see if there's any more questions, because we'll wrap up. I think there's another live one right after me, so... There we go, I can see your face again. Well, I can't see you, but you can see me. Let's see, I love the green and blue. Yeah, the metallic paints are fine tech. So this is the set, pearlescent. These are made in Germany. I do know that there's quite a few knockoffs as well. So as somebody was telling me about that, a student saying, you know, careful what you're purchasing so you can get a good quality one. You can also use acrylic inks and splatter them into your watercolor and move them around. Just remember that every time you introduce any kind of acrylic based thing to your watercolor, that just a reminder about your watercolor brushes, right? Because you might not want to get acrylic paint on this style of brush. And you can paint watercolor with acrylic brushes too, if you can get some cool techniques and textures with that. Oh, thank you. I'm glad it inspired you. I've heard some people say before this that they have these pastels and they weren't using them because they didn't really know what to do with them. So I'm really hoping that that this will inspire you to get out and use them and get playing with them. And even if you don't create a whole page, just practice your mark making. Just get some water on them, push them around, try blending them, try splattering them, and see what happens. Also a great tool for just making some papers that you'll add to your collage stash. So just take out some different papers and try them on any kind of paper and see how they perform. And then you can save those papers and add them to your collection that you can use through your journaling throughout the year.
Yeah,
Thank you, Amy.
Like button.
Yeah. Oh, remember to hit the like button. See, I wasn't going to say it, but thank you, Yvonne. Yes, hit the like button. I have a goal for myself to put out a YouTube video every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. It's hard. I have tiny people in my house who are relatively needy at times, but we have one recorded that we haven't edited for next week. So hopefully we'll get to that. Although it's Halloween, so that's a little bit crazy.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. It's great to hear from you guys. Yeah, so if there's no more questions.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes for quick
Well,
questions.
there's I think Amy said there's a pre-recorded one
Okay.
next, starting in 5 minutes, but it goes live in 5 minutes. So, yeah. Okay, thanks so much. I'll check out the comments after it's posted as well. So if you have more questions, I'll be sure to look for those, and in the classroom too. Okay, thanks so much. Bye. Oh, Richard, you should come around and say bye.
Okay.
Oh,
Sure.
Richard will come around.
Okay. On the camera.
We met in documentary film class years ago, so he's my guy helping me out with the tech. Okay, bye everyone. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
The rest of the comments coming.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of thank yous and